Greetings, everyone. It is a nice and clear morning here in southeast Georgia. It's not too hot yet. It's in the high 70s. Very, very sunny once we get out of the tree, so I do apologize if it's a bit shiny outside. Ooh, that's some bad glare. Excuse me. Had a good morning. Did my normal workout for Tuesdays. I got my watch back on that my friend made me from the military. It needs to get a little polished up and given some love because this is like an everyday watch. It looks fancy to me, but I'm not a big watch person. So, but he can make it look real nice and good. But yeah, we should be getting into market morning report here in a second. No really huge news that I know about that happened overnight off the top of my head. I know Elon Musk announced making or his intentions of making a new third party. I doubt that's going to have any real sway, but who knows? We'll see how that rolls out over the next couple months and really over the next year and a half, honestly. But yeah, let's get into the news.
Over the next 4 days, bringing in an impressive $24 billion in the U.S. Amazon will get the bulk of that. Last year, Adobe says online sales rose 11%, driven in large part by spending on back-to-school necessities. This year, more of the same, but also consumers looking to get ahead of tariff-related price increases will be looking for deals on things like electronics and apparel. We saw signs of similar shopping trends earlier this year. Many third-party sellers who utilize online marketplaces stocked up ahead of tariffs, so online discounting could still be relatively strong. Other independent businesses, though, are said to be sitting out Prime Day, wanting to preserve inventory because of tariff uncertainty. I'm Novasafo for Marketplace.
Dow futures are down 0.1%. S&P futures are up 0.1%. Nasdaq futures up 0.3% now. The take your shoes off at the X-ray machine thing has been going on for 19 years now, but now TSA and Homeland Security say you'll now get to keep shoes on at lots of airports, according to multiple published reports.
That's nice.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Mercury. Mercury offers banking and financial software to help businesses do more in one place. Learn more in
We can finally be like other civilized nations, maybe like Europe, where you don't have to get almost naked to board a plane.
And diving into home design trends, available in podcast apps.
I mean, ultimately,
Southern California
security shouldn't be convenient because then it's not secure. But when you're doing nonsense that doesn't actually help, it just makes everyone else mad and discontent.
Structures burned in just that fire, most of them homes, one of them mine. Today, checking in with one of my neighbors and colleagues, Lucy Russo,
so bright.
Development Events Manager at our sibling organization, Southern California Public Radio LAist, whose home was destroyed a block and a half over from us. She joins us from where she's been living temporarily with her husband and kids, 375 miles away in the San Francisco Bay Area. Hey, Lucy.
Hey, David.
There's a big poster that one of the local businesses put up in the parking lot. It's about probably 8 feet tall, and it maps all the houses destroyed in our town. The immediate destruction zone is beyond anything many people have ever experienced. You must have had to find temporary shelter, and you have kids. Where are you?
We're actually in Northern California. The kind of best option that I could think of immediately after the fire was to come up to my parents' house, where I grew up. So my kindergartner was able to slot right into actually the school that I went to.
That's good.
When I was a kid.
That's nice.
And we found a nearby preschool that had an opening for my preschooler.
So you're going to try to rebuild? He laughed nervously. It's not easy.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people have told me things that make me worry a little bit, and I'm choosing to ignore them. I have a lot of concern we get back. You know, we chose Altadena for a reason. And if it doesn't look like that anymore when we get back, then we might not want to live there. But in that scenario, we sell our newly rebuilt custom house and, you know, decide where we want to live instead. But in the meantime, we can maximize insurance payouts and take advantage of the low mortgage rate that we got when we bought our house.
Have you gotten anyone to draw up plans for a replacement house?
It's just sad.
We have an architect. It was somebody that we had a pre-existing relationship
And you know
with.
those insurance companies, it's been reported on a little bit already of them, you know, essentially nickel and diming people on the way out,
to rebuild a bigger house,
you know,
so that we can
trying
stay
to
there.
minimize as much payment to these people as possible. It's very sad. So luckily there is law firms and health groups over in California that are, you know, working with those who are affected by this situation. I mean, that was half a year ago. Working with them to get what they're owed. You know, they paid hundreds of dollars every month for home insurance, and they've lost their homes, and they deserve every dime of their insurance policy that they paid towards. So it's one of those things about insurance that's kind of gross. I mean, it's a for-profit model. You know, the goal of, sorry, I gotta speed up. It's like 60 on this turn. You know, their goal is to make as much money as possible off of people's fears of losing their home or their cars or their possessions, their livelihood, essentially, their way of life. And once they do lose that, the insurance company doesn't want to give it up because it costs them the money that they were given to provide a service. But ultimately, like I said yesterday, these places, they aren't for providing services, they're for making money. The service is just a means to make money. So, I don't know. It's just sad. Just sad the circumstances that so many people over in California are dealing with. So, yeah, that's the end of the morning report, I believe. Bing, bong, bong.
This is 90.3 FM, WPBQ and WPBQ HD Kingsland, part of the Georgia Public Broadcasting Radio Network. Live from the GPB newsroom.
I got that 3-note bing, bong,
Residents of
bong
an Atlanta
stuck in
homeless
my head
camp have
forever.
until Thursday to find a new place to live after the city announced a coming sweep. GPB's Amanda Andrews reports advocates are trying to negotiate.
Old Wheat Street residents are still grieving the death of Cornelius Taylor, who was killed by heavy equipment during a sweep in January. Advocates and remaining residents submitted an alternative housing proposal to the city. They say the city did not respond. Timothy Franzen is part of the Cornelius Taylor Coalition advocating for the unhoused. He says Old Wheat Street residents lost trust in the city.
What we have is this whack-a-mole approach of destroying an encampment, putting people into temporary housing, only to see them back in the street days or weeks later with less property and more desperate.
The city says it's reached out to all the residents
That's
of
sad.
the encampment to offer housing options. For GPB News, I'm
Hi,
Amanda
homeless
Andrews.
people, get out of
Meanwhile,
here.
The number of homeless
Find a
in
home.
Augusta has more than
As if
doubled
that's not the reason they
in
were
the past year,
homeless in the
according
first
to
place.
a count made in January. Naomi Stanton of Gap Ministries works closely with a shelter that has 5 family rooms, and she attributes the shocking number partly to Hurricane Helene.
All 5 of those rooms have consistently been full for several months. And again, a lot of that has to do with what we experienced September 27th.
She says there's also more accurate counting and larger economic concerns. The number of homeless in Augusta rose from 448 to 1,098.
Wow.
This is GPB.
Jesus Christ. It's huge.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm
Hey,
Kristen
which is
Wright.
why it's important
President
to
Trump's
fund
latest envoy,
weather
Steve
services
Witkoff,
and
is headed to Qatar.
infrastructure programs to minimize the effects of natural disasters like we talked about yesterday. It could have saved lives here in Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee last fall, and it could have saved lives over in Texas just a week ago.
Have resolved 80 to 90% of the terms of the ceasefire deal, but that it could take more than just a few days to reach a final deal. The agreement would include a 60-day ceasefire, exchanging hostages and prisoners. The main disagreements include Israel's demand to keep troops in a corridor captured in recent months, cutting across Gaza, and Hamas's demand for guarantees that talks during a ceasefire lead to a final end of war. Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met yesterday in the White House. Trump said the U.S. will hold talks with Iran following the U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. Netanyahu said he'd like a security pact and eventual peace between Israel and Syria. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Sad.
It's a race against the clock to find survivors of the devastating flash flooding in Texas. Hope is fading at the same time. Ryan Logue is a volunteer with the United Cajun Navy. He spoke to ABC News.
We're out there early and we're out there till we're falling over. When you looked at these guys, we're exhausted. They were emotionally tired by looking at the devastation, finding children's Bibles on the ground, looking through people's wreckage of their life. It takes a toll on you.
Logue also explains how volunteers are clearing masses of debris in search of victims. He says the search area is expansive with just piles of debris the size of multiple 18-wheelers. The death toll from the July 4th floods keeps rising, with many people still missing today.
It's like over 100 now.
The number of lives lost has surpassed 100, including 27 girls and counselors who were at sleepaway camp in Kerr County. U.S. importers are looking at several more weeks of tariff limbo. NPR's Scott Horsley reports President Trump is pushing back his deadline for higher import taxes.
Again?
President Trump has notified more than a dozen trading partners. He plans to impose import taxes of 25% or more. That's at least 2.5 times the existing levy. But Trump says the effective date of those higher tariffs will be August 1st. And if history's any guide, the president could change
that's the
his
date
mind
I've been hearing for the past couple days.
Higher tariffs had been set to take effect on Wednesday on goods from countries that failed to strike new trade agreements with the U.S. The federal government is collecting tens of
I feel like the
billions
August
of dollars
1st
a
thing
month
was
in tariff revenue, while foreign
maybe that was
companies
yesterday. I
absorb
heard the
some of that
August 1st
cost.
thing.
Most of the bill is paid by U.S. businesses and consumers. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Woo!
This is NPR News.
Increased sales taxes on all Americans.
As retailers
So
weigh the
dumb.
potential impacts of those tariffs, Amazon Prime is extending its annual Prime Day to 4 days. The e-commerce giant's discounts start today and go through Friday. Competing retailers are having own coinciding discount days. Target is trying to lure shoppers with Circle Week, and Walmart Deals starts today. Amazon is a financial supporter of NPR. A Swiss drug regulator approved the first malaria treatment specifically designed for newborns and infants. As NPR's Jonathan Lambert explains, the drug fills a long-standing gap in treatment for the deadly disease.
Roughly 30 million babies are born in areas with high malaria risk across Africa. There's not great data on how many are infected, but children under 5 account for nearly 3/4 of malaria deaths in the region. When cases in newborns and the smallest infants get severe, doctors had been giving drugs designed for older children in smaller doses. Babies metabolize drugs differently, so that strategy can potentially cause toxic overdose.
Make this the last story of the day.
Called
There's an interference from a
specifically formulated by the pharmaceutical company
local
for newborns and small infants, and can be dissolved into breast milk or formula. Approval in several African countries with a lot of malaria is expected in the coming weeks. Jonathan Lambert, NPR News.
Sean Diddy Combs has a virtual hearing today to discuss his sentencing. His
Maybe
attorneys
not.
want to execute
Yeah, there's a local preaching station, I guess Christian station. I think they're not using an allowed repeater or something. How do I say that? I think they're extending their signal farther than they're supposed to because they're not listed on any of like the local local radio lists, and when I found the station, they're like way south of here. So I think they're overextending their signal range, which is not good, not okay. You know, respect the FCC. Yeah, FCC. That's whatever. But no. It sounds a little good now. We'll see how it picks back up. It's always an issue with my commute, because it's just it just gets rough at a certain point in the morning. In the afternoon, the signal is usually a lot better.
Significantly worsened across several key indicators
Don't know
since
why.
2007. This includes the number of kids and teens with chronic diseases.
What we've been seeing, sort of anecdotally, more and more kids come in to the hospital, come into specialty clinics, and also they just seem to be sicker.
You can hear more in 15 minutes on Morning Edition.
I'm Mary Louise.
We don't want sick kids.
You may have heard that prices for used vehicles are up. Well, I bring this up because
give your piece of junk to NPR.
Worth more today as a donation than it was even a few months ago.
Give your hunker lemon to NPR.
Too expensive to repair.
Give them $50 for the scrap.
And the proceeds.
But no, I mean, if you're able to, you should do it.
gbb.org/cars.
I just do the monthly subscription.
It's Morning Edition.
Which, if you can, you should, you know?
And I'm Layla Falden. Good morning. The Texas Hill Country is reeling from the devastation caused by deadly floods.
The number of fatalities continues to increase 4 days after the overflowing Guadalupe River ravaged parts of the area, and residents are starting to ask whether this could have been prevented.
NPR's Sergio Martinez Beltran.
Entirely?
In
No.
Kerrville, Texas, and joins
Mitigated
us now.
significantly? Absolutely.
So let's start with the latest. What do we know now about fatalities? It's gone up?
Yeah, the latest news is very unfortunate. State authorities have said that at least 100 people have died as a result of the floods, but the vast majority of those fatalities are in one county, here, Kerr County. The sheriff's office says 84 people were killed. This figure includes 56 adults and 28 children. Others remain missing, so truly devastating news here.
It's just so many children. Were most of them at that Christian summer camp, Camp Mystic, that sits along the river?
Yeah, presumably, local authorities did not provide a breakdown in their last update, which happened in the form of a social media post yesterday, and different from the press conferences they had been holding twice a day. But Camp Mystic, which is the all-girls Christian summer camp along the Guadalupe River that you mentioned, has said that 27 campers and counselors were killed in the flood.
Jesus Christ.
I went up to the camp, Layla, and parts of it were swept away, and the area surrounded were completely destroyed. And even people who survived the floods, like Paul Scherer, have mentioned how painful it is to see so many kids die.
These kids that were there were like 7, 8, 9, and 10-year-olds. They had a big life ahead of them. And it's pitiful that this happened to them.
Scherer is 74 and was living in a small apartment by the Guadalupe River. He had to evacuate in the early hours of Friday when the water was already about 4 feet tall in the parking lot. He lost his home, but he says he's lucky and that he's praying for the families of the girls who died.
And Sergio, one of the big questions is about whether people were warned in time with enough notice to get out of the way of these flash floods. What are people telling you on the ground?
Yeah, almost all of the residents I've talked to in Kerr County say they did not get an alarm. Some got text messages, but they say it happened as the river was already on their steps. One of them told me
no radio signal
to have an alarm system along the river.
Keep going.
And this is something, I've also heard from other folks. They want flood sirens or something like that. And politicians seem to be listening. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick told Fox News yesterday the state needs to step up and pay for an alarm system along the Guadalupe River.
Had we had sirens along this area, up and down, the same type of sirens they have in Israel when there's an attack coming, that would have blown very loudly, it's possible that would have saved some of these lives.
Now, it's been 4 days of search and rescue. Is anything changing at this point?
At this point, search and rescue operations continue. The governor has said it's a 24/7 operation. Yesterday, I was by the riverbank and law enforcement agents were searching the area. And as the water volumes recede, you can clearly see the destruction in the area. So cleaning crews are now out in the streets too, removing debris from the river and the roads.
It's NPR's Sergio Martinez Beltran in Kerrville, Texas. Thank you for your reporting.
You're welcome.
As we just heard, first responders are still searching for people who are missing after the floods that swept central Texas. Among those searching are members of the U.S. Coast Guard. Commander Nathan Shakespeare is the Coast Guard Air Operations Officer overseeing the Guard's response. He's at the Coast Guard base in Corpus Christi, and he was nice enough to take a few minutes to talk to us on the line now. Good morning, Commander. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Can you describe the scope of operations that the Coast Guard has been conducting near Kerrville?
Yeah, absolutely. The Coast Guard is very quickly on Friday morning was notified about the response, and we
this is good work
two,
for our armed
assets
services.
on ready.
That's not a joke. This is what
So we launched
our military should be ready to do at a moment's notice, which is serving the people in a time of disaster. And I applaud the men and women that are in the Coast Guard that are serving the people of Texas right now.
Do you have any sense of how many people the Coast Guard has helped to locate so far?
Sure, absolutely. So, yeah, I think everyone's seen in the media the fantastic work of AST3 Ruskin. So on the ground here, he did the 165 number that's floating around. He helped those folks load into some partner helicopters. A Coast Guard Dolphin, Ian, Blair, and Seth. The rest of AST3 Ruskin's crew rescued 15 that day, and then we saved or assisted another 7 people.
Wow.
So we were really like the very kind of the bleeding edge of the response. We had the most impact.
You sure did. But can you just describe it? Like, is there a particular rescue or coordinated effort that stands out for you over these last several days? Recognizing that the entire team is participating and helping in this effort. But can you just give us one story?
Sure, absolutely. So I would say the thing that's really sticking out to me is just the fantastic work from Ian and the crew to get the helicopter 150 miles inland in some really atrocious weather conditions and try to get on scene. So initially they took off from Corpus and tried to fly low, working up the valleys, but the rain was so thick and the clouds so low, they ended up having to punching into the clouds inadvertently and climbing up, diverting to San Antonio. They tried to go above the clouds and do an instrument approach in the helicopter down to Kerrville. And unfortunately, the intensity of the rain, working with the air traffic control, was just too much. They were unable to punch through the weather at altitude, and so they diverted it for a second time. On their third attempt to go in, they kind of tried to loop in from the southwest of the storm, and then were unsuccessful then again because of the extreme weather. And only on the fourth time were Ian and the crew able to work up a valley and make it into the operating area and make it to Camp Mystic to begin their operation. So just it's a little tough to describe it in the truncated time here, but taking off at 6:30 a.m. in the morning and then getting on scene 7 hours later.
Jesus Christ.
4 different kind of bites at the apple, trying really hard to get the helicopter and the air crew in to effect some rescues. A Herculean effort.
I think you did a great job describing it. I mean, I think I get the picture, and it sounds
like it was a tough day.
Incredible skill and incredible training, and thank you all for this work. But can I just ask you this? The logistics of this are hard enough. How about the emotional toll of this?
Sure, absolutely. I would say the interesting thing about that is just how much control we have and how much visibility we have. So the Coast Guard is so oriented to our ability to support operations kind of at the shore and looking offshore. So kind of in contact with Ian and the crew throughout the day for their attempts to get in and trying to do some coaching and help and kind of validate the plan and the assumptions as they're working their way inland. And then, at least for me, kind of an emotional toll as they get on scene. The communications are just so limited for the Coast Guard there that once he's on scene, we have no idea what they're doing. They're flying so low that they're not on air traffic control radar. We don't have communications with them, and we're not texting our crews in the plane. So really kind of just a lot of trust in the crew once they took off on that fourth leg that they were going to make it in there and make an impact. So I talked to Ian the next time after he's on deck in Kerrville, and he had left Ruskin on scene, but the helicopter had ran out of gas, so they were getting gas. I got a kind of a quick brief from Ian on his plan and his intentions, and he took off back again. So there's really no discussion at the time about like the impact or the number of lives saved. Everything's very mission focused and kind of how we're going to accomplish the next step.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this, and thank you for your service and that of your other colleagues and teammates. We all appreciate it, and we're all thinking of you. That's Air Operations Officer Nathan Shakespeare. He's been leading U.S. Coast Guard rescue operations in Texas. Commander, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
104.
All right, we're going to leave it there for the radio itself today. Good work again to the men and women in the Coast Guard doing that. It is hard work, doing real humanitarian work, helping out our neighbors, really. It's just sad. When I was a kid, I went to a camp similar to what these girls went to, and it would have been crazy if there was a flash flood, at the camp that I had went to. I don't think, the counselors there would have had the resources to get us out in a reasonable manner. They didn't have like a school bus to load up a bunch of kids. I was, an hour and a half away from my own home. Like I was a decent distance away. And some of the kids there, their parents had traveled a lot more than just an hour and a half to drop off their kids. And the story story is not the right word. The event that has just happened in Texas, some of those kids were literally across the state, and some of them, I believe, were out of state. It's just sad. It's sad to see. I wish there was more proactive things that were done. Better warning systems. They would have helped. Better storm tracking would have helped. Better infrastructure in these flood-prone areas. Like this isn't Central Texas is known for having floods just as much as the Gulf is known for having hurricanes. Like this is a part of life, but it's not a part of life that we can just wave our hands and be like, it happens, like Ted Cruz did. Ted Cruz basically just went, these floods happen, oh well, but I'm very sad about the children. Yeah, no, that's not the correct response. The correct response is, this is a tragedy. There were mistakes made. There wasn't the infrastructure there that needed to be there, and we're going to work on getting that infrastructure. And it's just sad. Overall, it's just sad. So there's work we can do here in Georgia to prevent something similar from happening. As I said, and as everyone here in Georgia knows, Hurricane Helene devastated the northern part of our state. When it went past here in southeast Georgia, honestly, it was kind of just a blip. It wasn't very much. I was lucky enough to get the day off. I was still in the Navy at the time. I got the day off because the storm was coming, and the next day I had to go back to the ship because I was standing duty, so I had to stay on the boat for like a whole 24 hours after the fact, which is just normal Navy stuff. And like base, yeah, there was trees and stuff knocked over, but it wasn't crazy. It was very windy still. And some of the roads were closed on base, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't what happened in northern Georgia or in the Carolinas, really North Carolina. But we have these lessons in front of us, and we have the power to prevent something like this happening again. We're not going to prevent another hurricane, but we can prevent all the lives that were lost due to another hurricane. And our friends and our family and our fellow Americans over in Texas can do the same thing to stop another flood like this from ravaging just their land and destroying lives. So sorry to end on such a sad note, but I mean, it's a little bit of a sad time right now.